My dad was 82 years of age. He had chronic kidney disease. He had suffered through a pneumonia that they finally diagnosed in May of that year, which was the earlier misdiagnosis I was in reference to. He'd been on an inhaler. He had high blood pressure, high cholesterol. He'd had a quintuple bypass. He'd had a stent put in. He had peripheral artery disease. He had diabetes. And his chronic kidney disease was in stage 3. We were lucky to keep him at high stage 3. And he had, as they put it, so many comorbidities that I was surprised that they even attempted to do a surgery. But obviously they had already made themselves responsible for him enough by misdiagnosing him that they had to do something. They had to offer some form of treatment by then, due to the misdiagnosis, otherwise they wouldn't be here. It would be very fair to go even further than that. I was told by the thoracic surgeon that the surgery they were going to perform upon him was the most painful surgery that they could do, and that it would be important beyond belief that he would have a pain pump implanted so that they could control the pain afterwards. And in fact, he never did have that done. In fact, they misdiagnosed him from May of that year, 2009, up until his death on August 27th. Once they got inside of him after they'd already cut him open, determined that in their estimation there was nothing that could be done for him, they tried to put a spin on it, of course, and say that he had so much cancer it was beyond saving. But after he did die, he languished in the hospital. He developed dementia within days because his values in his systems kept changing. They wouldn't do anything other than a perfunctory blood test. They wanted to keep him medicated so that, to me, it wasn't quite as evident that he was slipping and slipping quickly. And toward the end, they said that they needed to put him back into ICU, put him on a ventilator. And I watched 5 people who were supposed to be transferring him stand around for a matter of hours. It took about 4 hours. And then he did end up going into cardiac arrest and dying. So they wanted to make sure that not only did they do nothing for him, but they went so far as 2 days before he died, the doctor who was supposed to be following his recovery took himself off of my father's case, leaving him without a doctor. The fact that they treated me poorly afterwards was something that I could have lived with, but in fact it was the way that they treated my father, not only as though he wasn't a human, but as though he didn't matter. There was nothing about his care that mattered to them at the time. I could get no one to respond for anything in order to help him. And I began looking for an attorney around September of 2009. And I made an average of 4 to 5 calls a day, 3 to 5 days a week, and contacted attorneys literally from one end of California to the next, from Northern California all the way down to San Diego. And so I would imagine I spoke with a minimum of 100 to 150 attorneys, or attorneys that I was sent to by attorneys who would not touch the case but recommended that I would call, stating that they probably would accept the case. I could tell that there was a great deal of respect for you, and I would go so far as to say a fear of you as far as Kaiser coming up against you, if that's the proper terminology. As far as your representation, you were not the attorney they wanted to see opposite the table next to me in a case that I know that they took for granted as a slam dunk, as far as me walking away from them without ever accepting responsibility and certainly without ever making payment. The result made me glad that I had somebody who could speak for me in a forum that I clearly was not going to be able to speak for myself and for my father. And that was what counted to me, was making sure that my father was recognized as a human and that Kaiser needed to admit their fault and that what they had done to him was wrong.